God really let me see this, that write this down for some of you that weren't here. I know I did this last week. I'm going to do it again because I want to be effective. I don't need to be talented. Get this and understand this. 3 places faith becomes released. Now, this was God's idea. This wasn't my idea, so you're probably right on the right timing. 3 places faith gets released is what you think, by what you're thinking, by what you're saying, and by what you're doing. Amen? So 3 places faith gets released is think, say, and do. Did you get that? You know that. You've heard that before. But what I want you to understand is this, is that in the thinking, you're going to try to be overrode by doubting. Okay? The minute you start thinking right, doubt's going to come in and say, you can't do that. Why? Because doubt's trying to get you to stop this thing from going forward. See, what you think right thoughts, right? Come on, guys. We can do this quick if we work. Thinking says, you can do it. So before you act, or before you say, or before you put motion to it, it starts as a thought in your mind. Positive or negative. Right? You can't do that. You got to take that doubt and say, no, yeah, I can. And it makes you mobile. Are you getting this? So we said the first place was what? Thinking. Correct? Thinking. When you get thinking going right, doubt's going to try to come and say, forget it. Stop thinking like that. That's not for you. You got it? But when you got to do what? So you got to doubt your doubts. You got to change your doubts with right thoughts, okay? So get that. We've been there, right? We got the CD. You can get it. The next thing was this. What? Saying. And what do we say about fear? Fear is going to try to come and get you to be quiet. Don't say that. See, your mouth might get ready to say, mountain, you got to move. But fear is going to come along and say what? Don't say that. Come on, don't look at me like you ain't never been here. You have been here, hello? Because I'm you and you're me and we all do the same thing. I'm about ready to say, oh, God's going to work it all out. And fear shows up and goes, well, what if it don't work out? And fear tries to tell you, you better shut up. But as long as you keep your mouth closed, you can't change your situation, guys. You like that? I know you like that, man. You see that? You got to see it. What is fear saying? Fear is saying, shh, shh, shh. Remember Bartimaeus sitting on the side of the road? Shut up. No, this is my chance to make it, man. Here comes Jesus. He's the Son of God. He's the only one that can help me. Bartimaeus, shut up. No, I ain't going to shut up. Jesus, Son of David, Son of David, Son of David, have mercy on me. Bartimaeus, shut up. You're blind. You're a beggar. Stay on the side of the road. This is my breakthrough moment. If I'm going to let fear keep me bottled up, I'm never going to change my situation. So I'm going to go for it. What do I got to lose? You got to get that no loss mentality. You got to get that. My situation can only get better. It can't get worse sometimes. You understand what I'm saying? You got to just step out on nothing. Amen. With the words in your mouth. But fear is going to try to come and clamp you down. Fear is going to say, shh, hush your mouth. But didn't Jesus say, speak to your mountain? Correct? Into the Bible, Mark 11:23 and 24. What do? We analyze the mountain, we look at the mountain, we play around with the mountain. Come on, guys. You got to speak to the mountain. Jesus didn't say through all this other stuff. He said you got to open your mouth. But what does fear say? Be quiet. Well, you can't side into fear, because if you side into fear, faith disappears. And when faith disappears, you can't change nothing. Right? So what you got to do, you got to get your fear overrode what you're saying. Because fear is going to come and say, don't say that. Then the last place God really took us is where I want to leave us today, and we're going to finish this up, is he said, the obstacle to moving forward is going to be the circumstances that are going to say, you better not step out on here. You get what I'm saying here? There has to be a think, there has to be a saying, and then there has to be a doing. Without the doing, faith is never released. But watch this, though. Some situations, now get this, pay attention. Really got to pay attention here. Come on. Because some of you are missing it in this. Some situations, you're going to have to think different to change the thing. I don't care what you do. What you do, is it going to change? It's powerful if you're paying attention. You like half asleep, some of you better wake up, because it's here. Because this is where you're missing it. Some of you are thinking, well, if I just do something, let me just take the pills and flush them down the toilet. Let me just go do this, and let me just go sow some. No, man. If you don't get your thinking right, it doesn't really matter what you do. You're doing ain't going to change the situation. You seeing it? Because we were taught so action-minded that if I just do this, then God, you got to be led by the Spirit of God. You understand this? And if you don't think you can overcome, I don't care what you do. What you do ain't going to change nothing. Me and you been there, we seen them. We do this, but then we don't get the results. Some things, you got to change the way you think to get faith to overcome the situation. You seeing it? Some things, well, I'm going to think this. I don't care what you think about it. I think God can. You better say something to the outward circumstance of life through this obstacle. You better get your words on that mountain. Some things, the only way they change is when you say something. You understand this? Some things, the only way it's going to change is you got to speak to it. Well, I'm going to think positive. That's great, but positive thinking ain't going to make you overcome. That's something you got to speak to. Are you seeing this? You get what I'm talking about here? You here today? Come on, you dialing down, getting this in your brain, downloading it, whatever they call that. You know, you got to download some information, put it in you. Are you getting what I'm saying here sometimes? Sometimes we think, well, I'm just going to think right. Big deal. You got to say something to your mountain. You ever been there where you don't want to say? You've been so pressed, it feels like, man, I can't even open my mouth. You better say. Why? Because that's what it's trying to do. The enemy's trying to keep you from saying something because he knows if you open your mouth, you're going to change the situation that you're walking through. You seeing it? You see what? But here's the thing. The more and more I'm walking with God, you want to know the more and more I'm understanding? Is this. You got to be so led by the Spirit of God because that's the key to every victory in your life. Because how do I know? I don't know. Some things you got to speak to. Some things you got to believe. Some things you got to do something thinking right. Something, you know what? It's a scenario for every kind of season. But the thing is, you got to be led by the Spirit of God. Because some things, you know what you got to do? You just got to get your thinking in the right line. Then your believing will go in the right direction. The Bible said Jesus knew what was in their heart. Why? Because he could perceive the thoughts and the intents of man's heart. You know what I'm trying to say? So you get where